Thank you, Ciarán. Minister, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Oh, I didn't know that much. I'll be quick though. I should give Mary Siri Carney more. She's going so well, actually. I feel bad taking this time away from you now. Minister, there's a couple. Yeah, I'll knock myself out. Wait for it. Anyway, Minister, to get back to seriousness of it, right? There actually are a couple of legitimate points I just want to make in terms of housing, and again, it just comes from my own experiences of what's happening in Dundalk in County Louth at the moment. So, on one hand, we have all of these ambitious plans to hit all these targets of housing that we need to build every year. Great. On the other hand, we have a planning regulator who's then giving advice to local authorities and council executives to say that they should de-zone land. So it's essentially de-zoning residential land where any developer or anyone could come along and put a planning application in tomorrow morning. And it's de-zoning that from strategic 1 to strategic 2. So it's essentially meaning nothing will be built in those lands for the next 5 years. So my only fear with this is, as a government, we are going ahead and saying we want to build X amount of houses every year, and I've no doubt we will do that. But at the same time, we have, and I'm not saying the planning regulator is another arm of government, but we have another unit within the bureaucracy of this country that is instigating ideas and providing advice to local authorities that is detrimental to the targets that we want to set by building houses. Because how can we, in a county like Louth, turn around and say we want to build X amount of houses, while at the same time county development plans have gone and de-zoned any legitimate land? So I don't know how that gets resolved. I know it's a bit like closing the stable door after the horse has bolted, but I feel the 2018 National Planning Framework, when it was designed all before COVID, naturally, I really think parts of that need to be re-examined in light of the COVID pandemic, in light of how much the world has changed since then. I just don't get that. I can't square that circle where we want to build X amount of houses and yet we have a planning regulator telling local authorities to de-zone land. I'm not saying it's happening everywhere, you know, I hope it isn't, but I'm just giving you my own 2 cents of experience of my own hometown of what's happening there. The other 2 points that I'd like to make is, and I have said this before, and I think it was Senator Byrne mentioned it earlier, is that we have to be able to hold local authorities to account. So there can be absolutely no excuse for a local authority not leading its own way in the building of houses. There can be no excuse for a couple of counties, and I mean outside of the big cities, so counties like Louth, local authorities like Louth, there can be no excuse for one local authority of a similar size punching well above its targets and doing very well, and another local authority not living up to what's required of it. And where does that come around? I think then that chief executives should be held accountable to Oireachtas committees, and I think they should come before Oireachtas committees a couple of times a year to answer. This is exactly, for me to turn around and say, why is Louth County Council doing really well at this compared to Leitrim County Council or another local authority? Because chief executives, whether we like it or not, are answerable to nobody. So we need to make sure that they're answerable to the Oireachtas when it comes to house building in particular, because otherwise it will just be a case of local authorities turn around in a couple of years' time and say, oh, well, we tried our best. You know, and then we as a government have set all these really important targets that we want to hit that won't be hit. So we need to make sure we're policing that in local authorities, and I think chief executives should be made accountable to the Oireachtas in terms of, in a lot of aspects, but in terms of housing, definitely towards the Housing Oireachtas Committee. The final point about local authorities, and again this is to add on a positive point of it, is, and I'm really pleased to see it in the Minister's speech earlier, launching the CPO programme to allow local authorities to acquire vacant properties. So we've already been doing this in Louth since 2015 because we had a really good Director of Services of Housing and a really good Chief Executive. They're all still there, they're in different positions. But like they were able to CPO 130 vacant houses in the town of Dundalk and turn them into social housing of people living in them. Like 130 houses is a housing estate and then some. And the thing about that then is it's taken derelict and vacant houses away that could be causing antisocial problems, or if you're living in a dilapidated house, there's damp and all sorts of stuff coming into another local authority house, the person had no resource whatsoever because they wouldn't know who owned it or what the history of it was. It gets worse and worse and worse. It gets more expensive for the state to come in and try and do it back up. However, Louth County Council were doing that as an absolute forerunner. They were doing that of their own initiative. And I really think that as a government, if we're going to be launching a CPO programme, we should go to a local authority who knows how to do it. And that is Louth County Council, because they were doing this before it was even a strategy of government 5-6 years ago. And as I've said, I've seen the benefits myself, where as a councillor you can go along to the council and say, there's a vacant home that's causing X amount of issues in an area, and within 12 to 15 months there's a family of 3 or 4 living in it. It's absolutely superb, and I think it should be a flagship priority of this government that we use the CPO process to get vacant houses, get them back into a housing stock, and I would love to really see an energetic programme like that implemented across every local authority in this country.